Welcome back to the Presentation Folder Ink Design Tutorial series. Today we will be designing a print-ready raised UV file based on intricate details like water droplets and ocean waves. So let's get started. We will begin by downloading a raised UV texture template from the Presentation Folder website. We're using this template because it automatically creates the separate CMYK and raised UV layers for us, so we don't have to worry about making them our own. It also presets the raised UV in the preset color magenta. You can go ahead and go to www.presentationfolder.com or click the link in the description for the video. Once you're at the Presentation Folder website, you can go ahead to the Resources tab and then click on the Templates, Raised UV, and then go to Raised UV Textures. From there, you can download your texture. Once your texture has been downloaded, you can right-click the PDF and say Open with Adobe Illustrator. Once you're in Illustrator, you will see the CMYK artwork, the die, all the template information you need, and the raised UV texture and type. You can go ahead and unlock the raised UV texture and type and delete that since we won't be using it for the tutorial today. Once you've deleted all the raised UV texture and type, you can go ahead and design your own folder. Today we're going to be working with this fancy soda company folder that I created, and we're going to be focusing mostly on that soda image and how to get really intricate fine details using the image trace function, which creates a vector file out of an image in Illustrator. The first thing we want to do is lock all of the elements in the CMYK file layer section of the files. We want to do this so that the registration stays clean and nothing gets moved around while we create the image. However, in order to create the raised UV vector file from that soda image, we're going to have to duplicate that image. In order to do this, we're going to have to unlock the image, duplicate it, relock the original image, and then make sure that duplicate image is stacked perfectly on top of the original image. Once the duplicate image is stacked perfectly on top of the original image, we should go ahead and move it into the raised UV file section in the layers. Make sure it has that magenta outline and make sure it's in that raised UV layer section because that's the layer it's going to be in. Once we have successfully duplicated that image, make sure we go ahead and relock that original image so that its position stays fixed. Once the duplicate image is perfectly aligned with the original image, we need to go ahead and move it to the raised UV layer section, since we're going to be tracing it in order to make a raised UV vector file. Once the image is set into the raised UV layer section, we can go ahead and rasterize it. This step is not necessary and you can skip it if your image is already rasterized. The only reason we're doing this is to make sure that the image it's readable for the image trace function in Illustrator. And now we're going to get to the very exciting part where we create the vector file out of the image. In order to do this, you go to the top bar next to File. It says Object, pull down the drop down menu, and we're going to go all the way down to Image Trace and then click Make and Expand. You will get a pop-up menu that says, are you sure you want to make and expand this? It may take a while. Maybe you don't get a pop-up menu. If you do, just simply click OK. And this is something that your image should end up looking like. Now this image is a solid vector. It looks great. We could go ahead and just, as soon as we make that black into magenta, we could go ahead and send that to the press and it would be great to print. However, I think we can make it even better, even more customized, and really pull out that detail to accentuate the design. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to start that process by clicking on the image with the filled-in cursor so that we can get a little bit of vector information about what it looks like. The second step is going to change the stroke of that vector file to magenta. This will not only make it print ready for raised UV, it's also just going to give us visually to the naked eye a really good contrast from that brown soda color, which is what we want to see, so we can see what bubbles have been hit by that image trace and what maybe have been forgotten or that we really want to add to. So now you can see that magenta colored overline. We can see all the things that we love about this vector tracing, but then we can also see some of the things we want to adjust. I'm going to go ahead and toggle between turning on and off the CMYK artwork so that I can just focus on the raised UV design. The first thing that I want to change about this vector file is the pink border. Sometimes the raised UV border around the image gives it an extra depth. It will look great. In this case, I actually don't want this, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the filled-in cursor on the left-hand toolbar and click on the anchor points of the border and just hit delete. Now that I have successfully deleted the border and have plenty of vector artwork to keep working with, I'm going to go ahead and see what we can change from a magenta outline to a magenta fill to try and give it that extra thickness of raised UV in contrast to some of the smaller little details of raised UV that we get from outlining the bubbles. The first place I see that I want to do this is on the big ice cube on the right. This will look really great as the light naturally hits this ice cube to give it a shine in the image, so adding this thick, clear, glossy fill over that is going to look really good. The second thing I see about this design that I'm interested in changing is I see the space between the ice cubes at the very top of the soda line. There's two white shapes that I could accentuate by adding a stroke outline. I'm actually going to do this with the pen tool. If the pen tool is something that is new to you, we have a whole tutorial video about this in a previous video, so you can go ahead and watch that. If you're already familiar with the pen tool, go ahead and follow along. I'm just going to do a very quick outline where I'm laying down a bunch of anchor points around the shape that I want to do and then completing that to create a whole shape. You can leave this as a stroke outline or reverse that to make it a fill. I'm going to leave it as a stroke outline because I think that will help create a great shadow on that line where the soda hits the ice. Okay, and then the last two things that I want to work on for this vector file to just make it perfect. I noticed in the left bottom corner and the right bottom corner a lot of the bubbles got kind of missing from the image trace, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a bunch of rounded ellipses and rounded rectangles and just draw basically the shapes of those bubbles in the raised UV magenta color. This is totally freehand and it can be just quickly done. I'm just quickly making them larger and smaller so that I think that they fit the shape the best. Obviously, because these are super fine details, precision isn't important, but we're going to try to be as precise as we can with this part of the design. You can do most of this work with the left outline on the cursor tool on the left-hand toolbar. Sometimes Illustrator will block you from scaling down an object when it gets past a certain smallness. In order to combat this, you can just go to the tab to go to where the file and edit an object is at the top of the page. Go to Object, Transform, and scale it down. This scales it uniformly so there's no warping or distortion of your shapes. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly make the last few bubbles on this left-hand page. I really think that adding this on the two corners of the page will not only help balance the raised UV of the image, but it also will bring the eye to all points of the image, leaving a lasting impression that's just going to last a little bit longer than if there was less information out there. This is also a great idea to add little texture and details to because it doesn't detract from the overall design and it's actually not going to be very visually cluttering, but it will provide a great tactile effect for the anyone that you want to show this folder to remember. And I think I've added plenty of bubbles to get that carbonation really hit home in the soda. I'm satisfied with the design. I think it looks really great and I'm gonna just be done. From this point on, you can either upload this whole Illustrator file, which is totally print ready, to the online website as your artwork, or you could go online to the resources page again and go to General Artwork Information tab. That tab will show you all of the ways you can export the file or condense it if you would like to upload the artwork in a different way and export it. And this is the end of the tutorial. During this tutorial, we did a really cool image trace, which creates an original vector from an image that we're choosing. This makes it really easily print ready for raised UV design on top of this image. And it is something that would have taken us hours to do by hand. The image trace function is a really great tool to use to create vector designs that are totally unique and original and based off the images in your design.